Hello guys, my name is 𝐔𝐤𝐫𝐚𝐽 and welcome to the weekly current affairs session for international relations. We will be talking about two topics, that is Ukraine-Russia war as well as renewed or revamped Iran-USA conflict. So let's start. The most important current affair that happened in the international relations field is actually Russia attacks on Ukrainian cities. See, I have added few current affair snippets which is regarding the Russia-Ukraine war that happened in the past weeks. So if we correlate and connect these events, you could understand there is a larger geopolitical conflict that is happening there. So Russia attacks on Ukrainian cities, killing 6 people, and it also caused several damages to critical infrastructures of Ukraine, particularly regarding defense systems. So if we see the greater picture, we can see understand that the heading itself shows that it exposes the air defense system. Okay, Russia attacked Ukraine because they were lacking adequate air defense system, which involves major anti-ballistic counter-missile systems like Patriot, which is actually provided by the United States of America to Ukraine. So question is, why Russia started attacking right now? We all know it's all linked. These news seems to be what presented in the newspapers as different events, but actually it's all part and parcel of a larger conflict between United States and Russia. Particularly, whenever USA weakens, Russia finds time and tide, waits for it and attack Ukraine. For example, Ukraine was having a shortage of Patriot and other air defense system, which made them vulnerable, and Russia capitalized it by attacking them. And why this scarcity came? It's because actually USA started focusing on conflict between or versus Iran, which made them to mobilize their resources to the Middle Eastern or Persian Gulf region to counter Iranian attack on their strategic partners in the region. For example, Kuwait, Qatar, UAE and Saudi. So as they became busy with one fight, they could not manage to assist the other party, that is the Ukraine. So Russia made use of this opportunity and attacked Ukraine. And most importantly, you need to know that this happened also in the past in the vice versa direction. That was actually 9 people killed in Russia. Ukraine intensifies attack against each other, as well as Ukraine drone hits southern Russian refineries and Azov port, which are critical infrastructure, energy infrastructure for Russia. You need to know why they are attacking these infrastructures. If you have heard that it is happening parallelly actually. One, there is Ukraine-Russia fight. The other, there is Iran versus United States fight. These are happening in 2 different places, but it is more than interconnected than you could imagine. For example, Russia, how do they run this war or how do they proceed with this war? It's all about money. Russia exports refined petroleum products in the international market at a cheaper rate than the normal global market standards, and using that they fund the military program that is ongoing against Ukraine. Not only Ukraine, actually everywhere wherever their military plans proceeds, it is funded by the government by the money that is earned by selling oil. Particularly countries like India used to import Russian oil at huge quantities. They are good at resources of natural gas and oil, processed oil or crude oil. So, and another important infrastructure that Russia has is actually associated with it is, apart from refineries, is fertilizer production companies. They are the leading producers or exporters of fertilizers. Countries like India imports from them. So if they attack these institutions, it would cripple down Russia's capability to fund the war. That's the idea of it. Okay, and vice versa, Russia is strategically attacking military production centers of Ukraine so that it would make them dependent on the West to what? To fight with Russia. And dependent means they have to wait for supply from the either European Union or United States. And if after for a while they might support the war, but for long duration it makes them also difficult to proceed with the war. So they might push Ukraine for more reasonable settlements. So that's the idea of this war going on. And again, this war, Ukraine-Russia war, is connected with Iran-USA conflict actually. When Russia or Ukraine attacked Russia, it was because Russians were vulnerable, because Iran is a strategic partner for Russia, and Russia also backs Iran for the venture what they have been doing in the Middle East. Particularly if you see it, you can understand the concept by the way in which Iran works, how precise their military attacks are going on. Russia provides them with arms, ammunition, as well as most importantly strategic satellite locations or satellite imagery, which helps Iran to accurately attack the US bases in the Middle Eastern countries, particularly Kuwait and Qatar and UAE and Saudi. So these are the underlying connections of global or larger geopolitical fight. If you see it, we can understand there is a larger fight and why this escalation means. Moscow has recently stepped up the ballistic missile attack on Ukrainian sites. Okay, with USA-Iran conflict, USA is kept busy so that the Middle Eastern supply makes USA vulnerable in backing Ukrainian efforts. So that's why Russia is stepping up the war. Okay, and most importantly, another thing is how would they be capable? In the past few months, they were allowed to sell oil as well as their producers by removed sanctions, so that they were actually active in the international market, which aided them to capitalize a lot of forex. And another way in which we could say is how USA's interest is changing on the scenario. Right now they have greater things within their plates because they have to fight Iran. So in order to address that, they completely focus their resources in the Middle Eastern region. And not only resources, we need to understand the pressure of other allied parties is another problem for United States. For example, countries like India needs energy. Not only India, every other country need energy. Particularly Middle East provides nearly 20% of the global energy supply. So because of the war, it's actually completely blocked. We all know that there is a ongoing naval blockade between Iran and United States in the Persian Gulf, particularly Strait of Hormuz. So which means these countries, other countries need energy from other sources, which makes United States, or it compels United States to relieve sanction from Russia. That is the key part here. So the USA is forced to give up their sanctions which they imposed over Russia in the past years. So again Russia is back in business, which makes them, or which enables them to fund their war, which is already going on against Ukraine. And most importantly, the European Union, which have been backing Ukraine, is also fed up of the war. The prolongation is the key part here. And again, attack by Ukraine, this was actually planned because there was a particular time period where Iran and Russia were vulnerable, and there were consecutive attacks which forced them to concede a treaty. Particularly Iran went on with peace talks with the United States because they were struggling a bit. But at that point, along with Iran, the Russia also was struggling, which was capitalized by Ukraine in the past weeks. Now it's their turn to retaliate. And this is how it works. Attack on critical infrastructures. It cripples the country in regarding ensuring counterattacks, or even within their country, it would create crisis. For example, right now, another independent information that we could read is Iran has been compressing what domestic protest going against the government. See, that's the point here. If we damage enough infrastructures, it would cripple the government to provide or supply to their own population, which would lead to what? Upsetting population, which would escalate into what? A conflict within the state itself. That's what everyone is eyeing, to cripple their own, cripple others' capability to fight, as well as create chaos within their government or within their governance structure. That's what every country is doing to one another. And within that one another conflict, there is a larger picture of axis formation. For example, it's all part and parcel, this axis formation. This is the core principle or the core driving philosophy that is going on right now. It is not something related to religion or personal conflict or regional conflict. It's purely alliance or axis formation, and each one aiding to their own better half to fight their wars, and in return they expect some benefit in future when they are in need. For example, if you see it, these are actually independent newses. For example, Israel. Okay, if we take each countries, for example, you would understand how this war is going on. One side there is Russia, there is Ukraine. It's happening in the Eastern European front. The other part is actually Iran versus United States. Then there is Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, Kuwait, and the Persian Gulf. And then there is Israel and the Palestinians. When I say Iran, you need to understand their proxy allies in the other countries too. For example, Hamas, who is fighting Israel, and there is Houthis, who is in Yemen, who is fighting Saudi Arabia. Again, then there is Hezbollah in Lebanon, that is countering Israel invasion. It all started, or it was from the beginning itself, it is a fight of actually Israel versus, this is the core fight happening in this region. Actually, even though these are independent newses, the underlying in the prime phase, even though it's independent, it is all connected. That is the truth. Israel versus the Arabic or Palestinians precisely. They want to clear the entire population from the Gaza Strip and own that strip. And more or less, why they are doing is not only it's about the place, or it's part of their political system, or the political, they have politicized the topic of removing Palestinians. Every party within Israel, if they want to win election, one of their commitments is to get Gaza and West Bank. That is the idea. Not even whether there is a population or not, it doesn't matter. It's a political or election winning strategy for the parties in Israel. Even though whatsoever the reasons are, they are actually fighting the Palestinians. Another fight going on is actually Shiite versus Sunni fight, which is the core of another issue, that is Iran versus Saudi Arabia, and their friendly partners in the region. So this fight forces Iran to take advantage of the weaknesses of Saudi Arabia. Okay, so when Israel is fighting Arabs or the Palestinians, it's a common cause for the Islamic world to defend it. So one common partner for Saudi and Israel is United States, USA. The problem stands there actually. Actually, whenever Israel fights these Palestinians, Saudi is forced to keep their mouths shut because of United States. Because United States need Israel and they are a strong ally for Israel. The USA is the prime reason for Israel's outrageous attacks over the Palestinians and the nearby country. It's the USA that is backing Israel. And the problem is, as no one is defending for the weak persecuted Palestinians, Iran steps in to gain the legitimacy in the Islamic world order. So for that, what they do is to fight back Israel. And to fight back Israel, they back the Hamas in the Palestinian state. And via Hamas, when they fight it, they eventually expanded or escalated the fight between Israel and Iran. That's what happened. And in order to fight these Israel and the Saudi Arabia and United States, Iran is backed by someone who is against United States, which gives us the larger picture that is actually the Cold War. It is all about this. If you ask me what is the prime reason for the conflict, is the Cold War between USA, and it was erstwhile USSR, now it's Russia and its partners. Because whenever USA brings up some kind of geopolitical change which favors them, for example, the Abraham Accord, which happened in 2022, that was the core reason for the entire conflict in the Middle East. USA set forward an equation, set forward a peace plan between Israel and the Middle Eastern countries. The Abraham Accord is one of the transformational agreement between it. It was never going to happen, but however it happened, and it was necessary for Iran to destabilize it, and it was necessary for Russia to back it. That's how the entire escalation happened when Hamas attacked Israel 1 year back. As a retaliation, Israel escalated the conflict, which completely destabilized Abraham Accord or completely nullified Abraham Accord. And vice versa, why Russia is fighting USA in the Middle Eastern region? That is the question. Why? It's again a geopolitical conflict where Ukraine wants to be part of NATO, and Russia is the one who is against Ukraine's joining NATO process. For example, NATO is part of USA's military program. Why Ukraine wants to join NATO is another question. It's because it is again the politicization of a common issue to mobilize or it's a election winning strategy for the Ukrainian political parties, claiming that they would liberalize, they would join NATO, they would ramp up their security. That kind of narrative brought international attention. When it is not the first time that Russia is attacking Ukraine. In 2014, they attacked and captured the Crimean Peninsula. Even before that, there were attacks from Russia on Ukraine. On those cases, Ukraine was all alone. Now what USA did was, USA backed Ukraine via European Union by providing arms, ammunition as well as money. Ukraine were able to purchase weapons from the international markets, and they were able to fend off Russia, and it's been more than 5 years since the conflict started. And because of that, Russia wanted USA and its allies to suffer somewhere else. So this is a conflict, or it's a continuation of the Cold War politics, which again forms or happens in the form of axis formation. The imaginary or hidden axis is actually USA, who is backing Ukraine, who is backing Israel in their conflict. And because of United States, European Union is forced to act accordingly and back Ukraine. Unfortunately, now European Union has took a stance on Iran-USA war as USA was the one who initiated it by engaging in a conflict between Iran and Israel. That is the point. So, as European Union keeps their silence in the Middle Eastern crisis, they are struggling with already with the Ukrainian crisis. So they are in a tough spot where they cannot proceed other than resolve or absolve this conflict. The other part is Russia, who is backing Iran with their military as well as scientific capability. Iran does not have enough infrastructure to strategically identify the US bases in the Middle Eastern region. How they are capable of it? The answer is they are helped by someone more powerful. The answer is who? So the question is who, and the answer is Russia plus the other party or the hidden party is China. These two guys aid Iran to fight against United States. That's why Iran is capable of it. Not only their drones or kamikaze drones or missile system, it's how they could attack it. We need to identify the strategic infrastructures of United States. For that, Russia and China is assisting Iran. And Iran, in order to fund the war, they need money. And that money comes through the oil supply to China and other partners of Iran. So, USA, that's why brought the blockade at the first place in order to curtail the oil supply, which would cripple the financial system of Iran. They have no other option but to what? Concede or come into a treaty in order to resolve internal crisis. There is already ongoing inflation. There are human rights crisis going on there. Then again, there is an unemployment crisis going on there. Entire protest is going against the regime. So, all United States want is to intensify this crisis, which would give them an upper hand. That's why they are blocking the economic part of Iran. But they cannot do anything regarding the military support given by Russia and China. That's why this attack or this conflict is prolonging. The other third part is actually geography. How Iran is pulling off is because they are blessed with accurate position or strategic position in the Persian Gulf. They are able to counter any movement in the Strait of Hormuz, and they are in proximity of the countries who are in friendship with the United States. Take for example Kuwait, Qatar and Saudi as well as UAE. There does not have any direct conflict between Iran. However, Iran is attacking them in order to force them to speak with the United States to withdraw from the region. That's the idea of it. For example, Iran attacked, if you see it, you would understand, Iran attacked the critical infrastructures of the West Asian nations. For example, desalination plant of the Kuwait. And again, they have attacked several infrastructure including energy storage, tankers and all, which eventually makes, for example, country like UAE who completely runs on two things, export of oil as well as tourism or what? Business. For example, Dubai. If they want to evade or avoid a economic crisis, they need to stabilize the region. That is the core part of it. So, in order to stabilize it, they need to end the conflict. But as the conflict prolongs, it affects everyone. That's the idea of Iran. Iran is already in a state of doomsday and they want others to be in that path and force USA to be withdrawn from the region. So that's why they are attacking the neighboring countries right now. It's a strategic play by Iran with the assistance of Russia and China to destabilize USA's position in the region. And we could see that USA is actually struggling a lot and they does not have enough backing from their allies except Israel, who is fighting their own war. And finally, USA, who is supposed to fight or support Ukraine, is struggling right now. And European Union altogether cannot support Ukraine for the fight against Russians. That is just matter of capability. The only guy who is capable is United States, and they are fighting a war against 2 or 3 guys altogether. That's the reason. And again, not only Iran is fighting them, Iran's proxies. That is another problem for the West Asian countries. That is, Hezbollah and Houthis are targeting the energy infrastructures of Saudi. Saudi completely rely on oil export for their economic activity. So if they cripple it, it's almost crippling the Saudi. And don't worry, Saudi won't go far to that point. They would immediately force USA to withdraw or even bring up a neutral agreement to resolve the conflict. And right now it's all this axis war between these guys, and it's the extension that is going on there. The Cold War extension is going on everywhere, and the parties who are benefiting is actually the parties who back with technology as well as military. Take for example China. China is benefiting from the war because they are getting cheap oil from both guys, that is Russia as well as Iran, and their military weapons are sold to these countries in order to continue their fighting, and it creates what opportunistic revenue for countries like China. Likewise, when it comes to United States, they are the benefiting party. Because of this backing, they are creating a huge financial debt to their allies, which in turn can be capitalized when they call upon for some other activity in future. But unfortunately, it's not going on as USA have planned, because majority does not want this war to continue any further, because it cripples or it damages their energy security, economic security. When I talk about economic security, why other countries are interested in ending this war? Not only for a country like India, it's all about remittance and employment. But for many other countries, let's say for example UK and even United States itself, why they want to end this war, or why they are forced, why the Middle Eastern countries want United States to end the war? The answer is, USA is blessed with the sovereign funds from these countries. If economic activity or economic prosperity of the Middle Eastern countries go down, even though USA might benefit by selling them military weapons, but their primary source of income is, or revenue is, not military sale or defense sale. It's the actual sovereign funds from Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, and other parties like UAE, US, particularly Abu Dhabi, and these states or emirates or these countries invest in European Union, UK, as well as United States. So this funding channel will be ruptured if they are getting financial crisis. So Iran wants to have that kind of crisis in this Middle Eastern country. For that, they want to continue this war. That's why actual re-escalation of these kind of conflict happened in the last week. And another part is, Iran does not want to lose their upper hand. As after these talks, there was a talk, or there was a strategic planning by the UN CELOS to find alternate route or maritime route for these tankers, or for the maritime alternate movement of gas and other supplies. That alternate route was bit more near to Oman. They made a plan with Oman without consulting Iran, and this route would provide or resume the natural supply of energy from the region without much influence of Iran. The proposed route was actually outside the purview of Iran's maritime borders. So the problem is, once it gets channelized, Iran have no other way of blocking it. So as a retaliation of that plan, they attacked the tankers as well as the West Asian countries who is backing USA. And as a retaliation to that, USA have to respond That's what happening right now. For 9 consecutive days, they have been attacking Iranian infrastructures. And more importantly, even though USA is focusing on military infrastructure, Iran does not have or would not give that kind of promises. They does not want or does not have the capability of fighting the United States altogether. So what they are doing is planning as well as strategically forces the friends of United States in the region to end the war. That's why they are indirectly attacking these countries. These countries have no other option but to defend themselves for now. Eventually they will run out of ammunitions. Then they will be forced to make USA to make a deal for their own economic conditions as well as energy supply. This is what happening in the Middle East right now. So we can see this re-escalation, and there would be re-escalation as well as a trough point or a peace talk period in future too. Because in order to end this conflict, they have to end the conflict between Ukraine and Russia. Once it's over, once the demand is over, it will also forces these countries to recede from their conflict. Otherwise, it won't end. And more importantly, either USA or Russia has to actively back out from their fight. This is not going to happen because they have their own interest, and it's third parties who are associated with them are facing the wrath of the conflicts. For example, India. What is happening for India, or how it's going to be for India in future? The answer is very simple. First of all, it affects our energy security. Then the safety of seafarers. Indians holds more than 70% of the maritime services. They are the pillars of what? Seafaring community, Indians. Because of this conflict, more than thousands are stranded in the Persian Gulf alone, and their life is at stake because of this war. So we have no other option but to pressurize United States as well as every party, because we are the neutral ones, Iran and anybody who is in the war, to absolve from the conflict or abstain from the conflict. And more importantly, what we present ourselves in the region, that is, we play ourselves, or we claim that we are the net security provider in the Indian Ocean region. Now, the conflict have casted a direct shadow over our own claims of Sagar and Mahasagar doctrine. So it is actually a challenge to Indian foreign policy. And not to mention, it is destabilizing what we know as a rule-based world order, which India much supports. So every war, even though it seems independent, it's actually connected. And the superpower, it's the conflict between the superpowers driven by the associated members is what we are seeing right now. Russia-Ukraine war, it is connected with USA-Iran conflict. One backs the another one. And if one fails, the other would attack. And if the other fails, the first one would attack. So this is the condition, and it is creating a complex issue of energy crisis, global supply chain shock, this is happening right now. So finally, if these both war ends, it would resolve Israel-Palestine conflict at least for some time. It would not end because it's the only thread line for the entire country's political regime to fight for. So it won't end. At least we could see some level of peace if these conflicts come to an end, which is very unlikely considering the present scenario. So India and many other countries have to brace for themselves for energy security as well as economic shocks. This is not, the war is not the, it's unfortunate to say, war is not the major problem here. The following economic crises that is coming ahead is the major problem here when it comes to numerical facts. War might kill many, but economic crisis might kill millions. That is the problem. And in order to end that, there needs to be a holistic attempt, or there needs to be some level of commitment from everybody, not only the major parties but allied parties as well as associated parties, forcing to end this war. Anyway, we have to wait and see what will happen in future, because it's nowhere going to end any soon. That's the actual painful truth. But underlying fact is, it's all about the internal conflict, which is expressed as what? Geopolitical conflicts. Everyone is linked to it, nobody is immune or away from it, and they are contributing this war one way or another way. And it's the opportunistic advantages taken by the countries like China, even India, have bought Russian oil at cheaper rate. One way or another way, we were backing, not, I wouldn't say we were backing, we were funding the war by supporting Russia, by buying oil as well as exporting critical defense equipments to Russia. On the contrary, if we see in the Middle Eastern region, even though we have been keeping our silence, it's actually getting complex, because we do have many stakeholdership in the Middle East. Why we are keeping silence is, we cannot make a move because we need both parties, as well as it does not help our cause of energy security as well as what other interest of economic benefits if we take side of either kind. That's why we are keeping silence. If we criticize, it's also a failure of Indian foreign policy to manage the situation. Even though we are managing, but it's not sufficient to keep up with the difficulties that is happening right now, as well as are ahead are coming in our way, So let's see what will happen in the future, and these are the important current affairs that happened in the past weeks. Thank you.
Amrita IAS Academy.